Hey, this is Stephen from the Bad Ideas Garage, and this is a very inconvenient day to forget my microphone and my tripod because I rented this Nissan Pathfinder. I'm going on a short trip, and so I got a rental car and thought I would do a review of this particular vehicle. The reason why I wanted to do that is because this has the dreaded CVT, and I wanted to drive it for myself to see, is it really that bad? And I know I'm gonna get some flack for it, but turns out it really isn't. So that's what a lot of today's video is about. So we'll go through this car a little bit, but really at the end of the day, my conclusion, CVT, not that bad.
First things first, what is a CVT? So a continuously variable transmission is a type of transmission that is put in a lot of modern cars, specifically Japanese cars. These types of transmissions have all sorts of technical reasons why they are different than a regular automatic transmission. Today I want to focus on a pro-con list for the end consumer, first starting on the pro side. So a lot of car manufacturers put these transmissions in their vehicles because they do get significantly better fuel economy, and there is a very smooth power delivery. You don't really feel the gears shifting because there aren't any gears in it. This is particularly noticeable going uphill. You don't have to have a downshift if you're accelerating uphill, for example. Downside about these, and this is something that I've experienced personally through a couple friends, is they really don't last that long. A lot of these transmissions will die about 100,000 miles, which is about half the life of a regular automatic transmission. And there is also a diminished performance feeling, and we'll talk about that in just a second when we go through the review of this Nissan Pathfinder. There's also a fairly aggressive maintenance schedule. A lot of transmissions, automatic transmissions, don't really require that much maintenance, maybe changing the fluid every 50,000 miles. There is a whole discussion about lifetime transmission fluid, but that's a different discussion. Nissan, for example, in their continuously variable transmissions, or many of their models, say that you need to change the automatic transmission fluid every 25,000 miles, which is fairly aggressive comparatively. So now that we've gone through that list, now we're going to go through a brief review of this 2019 Nissan Pathfinder that has a CVT to illustrate more what these pro and cons feel like in the driving experience.
Moving into the back, this is the 3-row model. There's just a little bit of storage that's down here. These seats do really easily go down, which is nice. There's a power outlet back here. The 3rd row is not that bad size-wise, and that middle row is not either. Coming into this row right here. All right, so whoa, well, looks like you also got your own climate control back here. That's pretty cool. So I'm about 6 feet tall, and I have plenty of space back here in the 2nd row, but let's see what it's like to get back there in that 3rd row. This button right there, that comes up. Let's see if I can figure this out. Okay, let's try this again. 3rd row entry, so this goes like that. But I can't not figure out 3rd row entry. All right, I guess. Oh, okay, I see. Down here. There we go. Okay, ooh, it's penny. There we go. Okay, so back here, it's not that bad. Put these up. It's not that bad, and that's really cool that these slide. That gives a lot of flexibility. Now getting out. Oh, there we go. Okay, that's easier. Although, unless I'm missing something, that seems really inconvenient that you have to set the front right there before you get back. Good, nice gymnastics. There we go. And there we go. Okay, you have the 110 intro, which is pretty cool. Coming in here, it's actually nice in this cabin. There's actually a good amount of sound detonated in here, so I'm at an airport. And even when the airplanes are going by, I can hardly hear anything, but let's go ahead and do the start up. My seat moves back into place from where it was. That was great. So blind spot monitors right here. I think that's pretty cool. There's an infotainment screen here, but as you can see, the sheen just makes it not viewable, which is a little challenging when it's really bright. This is what the gauges look like. We'll give it a little bit of a rev. So it doesn't sound bad. And in this infotainment system, it's got a couple of nice little things that are here. The tire pressure does display, which is nice for every wheel, which is great rather than just saying okay for your entire system. Every wheel is shown there when you're moving. This has your torque split, so there is a 4-wheel drive system here. Don't really know much about it, but it looks like that you can. This will tell you where your power is going. 22.5 miles to gallon overall. So I've only driven this car maybe 70 miles so far, and I was getting over 30 on the freeway doing 65. So over here, this infotainment system is nice. One thing that I didn't immediately understand was pressing the climate control button. A lot of these, this does have heated steering wheel, which is cool. It's a touchscreen. I couldn't figure out how to change the climate. It wasn't immediately apparent. They're down here. So I just, press the auto on here, which is nice. I like having actual buttons, which is great. What else do you have in here? Map information. Okay, well, it doesn't really see like there's much stuff in here. Okay, so look, there's a Nissan Connect services. I don't have a Nissan. I don't know much about this. What else? Another fuel economy button. A voice control if you plug in your phone to the system. Although down here it says charge only, so I don't think that this has CarPlay or anything like that. I'm actually not quite sure how to plug this in. Maybe I'll look at that in a second. There are some really cool features in this. The 360 camera is really cool. So the 360 camera helps me park, and this is a camera in the front, and you can see what's going on in the back. So all of that's really cool. So a couple other things. So you have gear selector, and then some nice storage in here. You have an upper and a lower, and maybe that's where you plug in if you want to have maybe CarPlay or some sort of connectivity, but nice and big in here, which is great. And then on the steering wheel, this is your adaptive cruise control where you can set your distance, a couple of your audio controls, and over here you have a couple other buttons. So there is a tow mode. Don't quite know what that does, but I like how this has a, oh, that's for a power outlet. That's pretty cool. I actually don't know where that is. Cool. Okay, there's a little symbol for a water bottle down there, which is great because my water bottle doesn't fit into these. Cool that you have a power operated tailgate. This is the lane keep system if you want to turn that off. You have power seats, so a lot of this stuff is really nice. So this is indeed where you want to hook in if you want to have your phone connect. One thing that I don't know what, if maybe this is something that I'm missing, but immediately when I plugged in my phone, it started playing the audio on here, and there's no option to pause it. And I can't, maybe there's something that I'm missing on here, but just like the climate control, it just wasn't intuitive. Okay, so it didn't give me the option to film and look at that at the same time. That's okay, but there was no pause button on here, but here's a picture of what it looked like. I can't figure out where's the pause button. So, I mean, I could turn it off, but I don't know. There's between that and the climate control, it just wasn't intuitive. Driving impressions of this Nissan Pathfinder. I've been in this car for just a couple minutes now, and it's a lot nicer than I thought it was going to be. I'm just looking at some of the features, and the fit and finish is it's actually pretty nice. It has the automatic cruise control, or the distance cruise control, which is great, and the CVT. I'm gonna just do some acceleration here. It's weird. Actually, it doesn't really bother me. This one doesn't have any of the fancy programming, I don't think, that tries to simulate real gears. I mean, even I'm going to get on the freeway here and giving a little bit of gas to it. It's really not that different than what you would experience in a really smooth, normal automatic transmission. So the engine does feel relatively peppy. The ride control in this car is surprisingly good. We have a 2013 CX-5 as our daily driver, and this is a much bigger car than that. It doesn't necessarily feel that much bigger though. The CX-5 is a pretty small SUV, and this is a mid-sized SUV, but overall just really impressed. I'll see if I can get a little bit of acceleration here. Pulling onto the freeway. Blinker for safety. That's peppy, and you can't really feel it. I honestly don't really notice. I mean, I honestly struggle with this one because the CVT is just, I know some friends that have had them in their Nissan SUVs and they've died really prematurely. I know some people that don't really care. I do know that a lot of people have these and they get better fuel economy than a regular SUV, but I mean, it's really quiet in here. The seats are very comfortable. I have heated seats, which is pretty cool. And I have, a little bit of creature comfort that's going to make this drive really nice. So I'll check in a little bit. Okay, so I've been driving the car for a little bit now, and the engine computer tells me that I'm doing just about 30 miles to the gallon, or at least that's what this is telling me. There's a lot of really fun computer stuff in here, driver assistance. gives me a notice whenever there's a car next to me. So that I like that the blind spot monitors, they're actually on the A-pillars here rather than being on the mirrors. So that's pretty nice. The tire pressure monitoring, I really like that this actually tells you what the tire pressure is rather than a lot of cars, they just say, hey, it's okay, but this will individually tell you what your tire pressure is. But yeah, I'm actually genuinely surprised. It's not that I was expecting this to be a bad experience, but this is actually a really nice ride on the road. All right, so we're gonna see how this adaptive cruise control works. So I'm doing the speed limit here in Oregon, 65, and there's a truck that just pulled in off of the freeway. Oh, okay, there we go. So the truck is doing, still accelerating, probably doing what, according to this, 60 miles an hour. Okay, it's got three car lengths. That's good. So I'm gonna move it down to 2 car lengths. All right, so it's going to move back up. The Mazda 3 that we have has a system that's not very aggressive. This one is actually a lot more aggressive. It's keeping this 2 car lengths and it's actually accelerating a lot better. Put my blinker on here. Okay, so I put my blinker on, it seems like it's accelerating. Interesting. The Mazda 3, at least the generation we have 2017 Mazda 3, and it just doesn't accelerate very well. If you have a space that opens up in front of you where you want to change lanes, you have to put the accelerator on. I haven't touched this accelerator. I'm still doing the speed limit here. So really interesting. This is just a lot more of an aggressive system in terms of forward and back than our Mazda. We did drive a 2020 Mazda 3 that had the adaptive cruise control that was a lot better. I always have to put my foot on the accelerator if I want to go out for a pass or anything. But this car, I didn't. It actually slowed down a little bit to maintain that 2 car distance. But then when the car kept going, that was in front of me, it sped right up. You heard a little bit of engine drone because this is the CVT. It's kind of what you get. But yeah, that actually worked really well. So I'm gonna go out for a pass again. Blinker on, and wow. Okay, so look, it seems like it does. When you put your blinker on, it starts to accelerate a little bit. And I'm at the 2 car length indication here. Really interesting. So, big fan of that compared to what we have in my Mazda. Okay, going up a hill, we're in South Salem, in Oregon. And we drive this a lot to go see my family, who lives in the north part of Salem and in Portland. And this particular hill, our Mazda CX-5, it struggles. It has to maintain 65, it generally has to go from 6th to 5th, and then a lot of times to 4th, which is a little jarring for that little engine. So this does have a more powerful engine in it, and with the CVT, I have the cruise control set to 65, and I can't hear it. I can't hear anything. It's just very smooth, it's very soft. All right, welcome to Portland, Oregon. Passing through the Hollywood district here. Checking out some of the more city driving experience of the Pathfinder. I really thought that particularly in the city that this would really bug me, but it really doesn't. When you go to accelerate like I'm now, it feels like, it really feels like an automatic transmission, but rather than going into the next gear, it just kind of like hums lower. And then, giving a little bit of gas and taking your foot off. And maybe this is because it's a bigger car, and the other CVTs that I've driven are smaller cars that just seem like they just peg straight up to 5,000 RPM or whatever. It really is not that bad, and I know that I know I'm going against all sorts of things that I ever thought about CVTs, but it's really not as bad. I hardly notice it. So I guess the conclusion from this is it's just really not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Final driving impressions. Would I buy a CVT? No. Maybe I'm too much of a traditionalist, but I still wouldn't buy the CVT. I like, obviously, a manual transmission, but those are very hard to come by in any sort of family vehicle. A standard automatic is really nice. I understand the advantages of the CVT, that you get better fuel economy. You do. That's pretty clear. I was talking with a friend of mine that in his Rogue, he says that he gets like 35 miles to the gallon on the freeway, which is pretty wild for a family SUV, especially one that has all-wheel drive. This one, again, it's getting just about 30 miles to the gallon here on the freeway, and then I did a little bit of in-town driving, and according to the trip computer, I'm still doing about 28 miles to the gallon, which is pretty wild. I still wouldn't get it though, and the biggest thing is probably the reliability. That's probably the biggest point of concern for me. We had a friend that theirs died at like 98,000 miles. They did drive across the country and they towed a small trailer when they moved. But I think that's kind of unacceptable in this day and age to have a transmission that dies before 100,000 miles. There is more of a maintenance schedule. I'm sure that not everyone does that maintenance schedule as well. But I don't know. I just can't bring myself around to buying one of these. I do see why people either don't care. I think that a lot of people are probably just apathetic about the CVT, because for the vast majority of the time, both in city, accelerating on the highway, annoying traffic, I hardly noticed. And even now I'm gonna put my foot into it and okay. That makes a little bit of noise, and then it goes back down, which honestly, that's what a regular transmission does, right? It drops the gear, accelerates, and goes back to the highest gear to save some fuel. So I think the biggest takeaway, though, is that all of the other cars that I've ever driven with a CVT, they all have really small engines that are not very powerful. I think the last car that I drove with a CVT was a Honda Civic when we were looking to buy that, or the Mazda 3, and we ended up going with the Mazda actually because of the automatic transmission. And that had a turbo on it. So that was a Honda Civic that had a turbocharger, and so I mean it was decently powerful for the car, but I mean it just droned and made so much noise. I think the keys to success are that this has a V6 that has the adequate amount of power for this vehicle. There's also a lot of sound deadening equipment or padding in this interior. It is pretty quiet in here. It's not as quiet as it could be. It's more quiet than our CX-5, but it is quiet. You can hardly hear the engine note, especially when you're at speed. So I think that maybe the size of the vehicle, the horsepower that it has, I think that those two things make this a lot more bearable. I still wouldn't buy one in a small car. In a small car, it definitely needs a manual transmission. That Civic had a programmed 7-speed flappy paddle, like shifting by the paddle shifts. It was really hokey. It was nice, but I would have had to leave it in sport mode all the time, which would have been really annoying. So that's the reason why we went with a Mazda, is because it had a regular transmission. Our Mazda probably doesn't get as good a gas mileage as it could, but at the same time, if it had a CVT, but at the same time, I do like that it has very crisp shifts, and for what it is, they're actually pretty quick as well. The conclusion on this is that I can see why people have these Nissan SUVs that have the CVT and they either don't care or they just learn to live with it, because it's really not that bad. And I am genuinely impressed with this entire car. I know that was a really quick review of it, but I just wanted to share my thoughts with CVT transmission. And if you end up buying one, I would make sure that it has low miles, that it has been maintained, or just buy one new that has a factory warranty. Just because I know too many people that have had these that have died, and the longevity of it, I just can't. So those are all of my thoughts on the CVT, particularly of this Nissan Pathfinder. Thanks for hanging out with us while I go on my little drive here to Portland. Remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.